thing I want to talk about, before we, get hands-on here is the African-American influence, and it's something I've been really getting into lately. And, when if you're going to just really simplify things, you have these Scots-Irish Celtic tunes coming over here, and then encountering African rhythms. And also you have Africans coming over here being asked to play new instruments and these new tunes. And what they did with that is just beautiful stuff, And, when you think about it, so many of the guys that I knew, there's not a top influential country. When I say country, I mean the whole Big Tent, everything from Old Time Fiddle to, honky tonk, right? Musician that did not have some African American major mentor. I mean, Hank Williams had a street musician named T-Tot. A.P. Carter went around with a guy named Leslie Riddle, who was like a human tape recorder before there were tape recorders. Bill Monroe. Arnold Schultz was a black musician in Kentucky who not only influenced Monroe, but he was a big influence on Merle Travis and Ike Everly. Well, Ike Everly's the dad of the Everly Brothers, who were the heroes of two guys from Liverpool when they started working out their harmonies, Lennon and McCartney. All this stuff's connected, and I think it's really cool. But all this goes back, and Tommy Jarrell learned tunes from black musicians, and you think about this happening in the heart of Jim Crow South. The musicians were way ahead of the curve because music was more important than all that other crap. I don't know. That's just... So I'll play a couple African American things. This comes from Gribble, Luskin, York. Okay, they were a black string band from East Tennessee, and they were recorded in the 40s. Now the name of this is Sambo, and for a lot of us, that's got kind of troublesome connotations. But I did this tune in a thing on black, African influence in Appalachian music with a guy from Senegambia who plays the akanting, which is the ancestor of the banjo, right? He goes, "What do you call that tune?" I said, "Sambo." He goes, "Sambo? That is the most common last name in my country." He goes, "It is like Smith or Jones in America." The vernacular is, they get some slave, "What's your name?" "Sambo."
So that's
Smith. And that's how that got around. Now, I never would have known that, except that, So anyway, they played this tune, Sambo, all right? And another one, I had forgotten this, but Mike Seeger collected this from a guy named Will Hayes, an African-American fiddler from Eastern Maryland, I believe, okay? And the funny thing is the way everybody tried to figure out what the title of the tune was. So at first, from the recording, Mike told us it was Titled Sally Gal, which sounded kind of weird. And then we figured out, and that's what we called it on the record. But then somebody said, well, actually, no, what he's saying is called Tie Your Dog Sally Gal, Tie Dog Sally Gal. But then the newest thing, which makes the most sense because after I've heard it, is he's going, it's titled Sally Gal. So it's Titled Sally Gal. And Titled Sally Gal. And they go, okay? All right. So anyway, there's a little, okay? So that's it. Whatever you want to call it, that's what it is. That's the way a lot of people do it. I guess there's other ways of doing it, but that's my way.
Do you end up singing singing or whistling the tune while you're in the process of learning?
Yeah,
it
you
or
know,
whistling?
if you to me,
Humming it?
if you can't hum a tune, how are you going to figure out how to
Yeah.
fiddle it?
Okay.
After you hum it, though, that's when you start finding all the nuance, all the little rhythmic and melodic and harmonic things that make it sound so good that you wanted to learn it, right?
Right.
I mean, you know, like let's see. There was one. Okay, I want to show you one more thing on this African American thing, and then I'll use that as a segue to get you all picking up some fiddles. How's that? All right. Okay, so I had learned this version of this tune called Midnight by a guy who knew a black fiddler named Jim Booker from Kentucky, who was a very influential fiddler. I did not realize when I was first learning the fiddle, and I had these old records of Taylor's Kentucky Boys playing Gray Eagle in the version I learned, that they had a black fiddler in that. Now, you know, in our world, so what? You've got to understand that in that world, this stuff was not happening in any other domain except music. You know? And I think that that's significant. You know? But anyway, Jim Booker, and I'll tell you what, some of the old musicians that I knew right in Rockbridge County here learned a lot of music from African American musicians who lived in the mountain regions of this county and played, you know, what we would call white Appalachian music. It was their music too, you know. Then they'd go into town and they'd play gospel and blues. They knew it both, but they, you know, everybody in those generations, the more and more I inquired about it, the more I found this was universal, okay? So I had learned Jim Booker's version of this tune, Midnight, which is very jazzy, okay? And then I heard the more Scots-Irish version that had preceded it. So I'll play you a little bit of both these. I've just been fooling with this recently, okay?
Yeah.
So it's called Midnight. Here's the old version of it. Pretty little tune, isn't it? All right. Well, here's what Booker did to it, and it took me so long to figure out what the heck he was doing on this. It's so weird because it starts off with this little tag that repeats, and it takes you a while to realize that's a tag. You'll see what I mean after I play it. This little tag. He took that part that was in the other tune and kind of set it apart rhythmically. I don't know, it's pretty brilliant when you can't, like, I can't communicate this in just a short thing like this, but if we had time to sit down and listen to the both two things, you see how cool it is. And again, like the bowing in that, you can tell that is dance music. I mean, there's, you know, yeah, it's fun to listen to, but those little rhythms in there. And so, like, my general advice for anybody that wants to play Old Time Fiddle is one: listen, 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 listen. That is the thing. Like, what I do when I'm going to learn tune, I just listen to that tune endlessly till it's permeating my consciousness. And then I try and figure out how to play it. And then I go back and I listen to it and I hear everything I'm doing wrong. Like, what? He's getting that. How come I'm not? That stuff's in there. I love seeing people keep that and finding new ways of using it. So that's just my own thing. Because basically most people nowadays want to play just kick butt breakdown stuff, right? But if you've got these little things in it, you can make nice little variations in it. What are some tunes that some of you all are working on that you'd like to have, you know, it would help seeing somebody else do it? I was told to make this hands-on, so I'm trying, but I don't know how many hands of how many different. Yes, sir.
Bachelor's Hall. Bachelor's Hall.
You know what? I've heard that, and it's a beautiful tune, but I don't know it. Where did you hear it from?
It was John Carson. YouTube.
Okay, wow. Well, I might get you to show me later.
So John Henry is
John Henry, okay.
just a great.
All right, now John Henry, there's so many different versions of it, and you know, in Kentucky they use the 4-chord in it. You know, when you're playing it on the guitar. I know the Tommy Jarrell's version of it mostly. Okay, and so that's what I'll play for you. And it's in A cross key A, yeah. And you know, banjo players love it too. It's a great banjo tune, and that's one of the things is like. Mount Airy fiddling or round peak fiddling, right, to me is the apogee of the fiddle banjo duet. And the way the fiddle plays with that is to work with the banjo. And the way the banjo, you know, all those guys played both fiddle and banjo. And so it just works so great together. And so again, you know, the focus of the fiddling is to make things work with fiddle banjo duet. Something like what I just played a minute ago, that big hoedown, that's solo fiddle stuff. By the time you add a guitar and even later a bass, you know, things change. Just look at it this way. In 1870, a fiddler's probably playing solo for a dance. By 1880s, they're playing fiddle and banjo. No matter what part of the mountains I talk to people from that old generation, you know, that was born in the 1890s, early 1900s, they said the guitar didn't come in until after World War I. Once the guitar comes in, you have to decide what the chord is, whether it's major or minor, for example, on a lot of those modal tunes. And the fiddler has to change things. Every instrument that gets added, the fiddler takes away some of all those ornaments we're talking about. So you find the most of those old Celtic ornaments in that West Virginia fiddling where they didn't do so much fiddle banjo stuff. Okay? But, you know, with something like John Henry, it's made to be in that round peak fiddle banjo duet thing. And so that's the way it works. And yeah, that just works great with the banjo, you know. The banjo and the fiddle drive each other. So the bowing, and that's a little different. It's, you know, it's a little bit more defined melodically and stuff. What I'm going to do here is just show you a few of these little regional things, then see something that you all would like to concentrate on, and we'll pick a tune and see what we can do with it. Okay, and I'll show you some things in standard too, in case some of you don't want to tune up. Let me see here. Started messing that with the other. No, I started thinking too much about what I wanted to tell you about this. This is a really old tune. This is Eden Hammond's, who was recorded in the 40s when he was in his late 80s. So this is 19th century fiddle style, okay? This is a tune called Big Hoedown. Let me focus on it a little bit. You hear it because, again, it's got a bunch of the stuff that you don't use every day in contemporary old-time fiddling, but you learn these things, they're in your toolbox, and you can bring them out in places where they fit, you know? So let me try this again. I could just show you, for example, again, these regional things are not so much in force anymore, but going back and listening to the old stuff and hearing these things and then get them in your toolbox, you know. All right, so I'm in cross key A here, right, which is pretty commonly used all over the mountains for a lot of A tunes. Not just because it makes some fingering easier, but because before the banjo came in, right, there's a general thing that it varied depending on the region, but in general, okay, for a long time fiddlers played dances alone. And so if you're hitting a string, right, that's still ringing while I go over and play the other things. If I'm playing a note, as soon as I take my finger off, it stops ringing. So having those open strings and using those drones, if you're being a solo fiddler for a dance, keep